Wait.
Oh no,
I
it's already just live.
dang it.
I
Okay,
see. I read that comment from Gary in like Bender's voice. Let's go already.
Hey, let's go.
So
Let's go.
impatient.
I read it with my son's voice. Dad, let's go. Come on, the game's
Come
starting.
on.
Oh, there's a new episode of What If, Bubba. Let's go watch it. I'm like, okay. So
I've been
yeah,
liking it. What if
what if, sir, dude?
it's very fan servicey and super condensed,
Absolutely,
but it's
that
fun. They've been
it
fun.
it's an interesting approach to the MCU. Let's just say that. If you haven't seen it, if you there's a couple of episodes out. This week was the second one. It was I like this one a little bit more than last week. I felt like this one's a
Yeah.
little bit more well put.
I I,
And
I was frustrated that the Agent Carter storyline was sort of the let's swap out just a couple pieces of Captain America, but it's
but
still
but
generally the same story.
and
And I
it's the
wanted
same
them to do
character.
something different with
Yeah.
her in that position. It wasn't really much of a what if.
It was more about her taking so him getting shot and her taking his spot by or forcing her way into the spot, and
Yeah.
then that role becomes,
But
the
but I felt like the chain of events that they sculpted for Black
T'Chaka.
Panther,
Yeah.
T'Challa getting
Yeah,
becoming
T'Challa.
Star Lord, it was so many really fun, quirky that came out of left field moments, but it was totally justified in the logic of the premise.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I wanted with like the Agent Carter, like changing who Captain America is, Captain
Yeah.
Carter. I
Like
think should
changing the
have been a
direction.
more fundamental difference, and we kind of
Yeah.
end up in the same place that we started with Captain America. The T'Challa episode is off the rails, and that was so
Dude,
much more fun to see how
eh,
crazy they could push it.
he prevented the snap. Let's just say that whole
I
concept
mean,
of
spoilers, but the cast, the voice cast for that episode
actually, it was
is
actually pretty good. Yeah, 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 yeah.
incredible.
I know. Spoilers. Sorry, I do apologize. For anybody hitting us up this this late or this early, depending where you are in the world. This is the best of our week, our weekly podcast show with your co-hosts here, some gadget guy with the red hat, Juan Carlos Bagnell, as usual, and of course yours truly, TK Bay. And we are hanging out on another day, this Thursday, this
It's good times.
Pixel announcement
Happy
week.
Pixel Week.
Happy surprise Pixel week. I actually didn't think this was going to happen. I kept thinking it was going to be like, oh yeah, sorry, hold on, I gotta hold
And it's
the
it's kind
precious.
of dark
All right,
olive.
but olive, not so much black, not so, yeah. Like depends on how you hold it. Like, yeah, it
It's
it
just
it
kind
has
of black.
like right there. See, you can kind of see it. This isn't black. This is more of a
I
greenish olive.
in sunlight, I really like it. I
Abs-
need to get out and shoot proper B-roll. All I did today, like I shot, edited, and rendered the video I put out today,
Mhm.
this morning. So I was really kind of abbreviating my workflow to make that happen. But I'm thinking tomorrow I'm going to try and get out and maybe take my wing or my V60 and shoot some proper daylight B-roll.
Mhm.
And it looks real pretty in sunlight. It's it's
Oh,
uh
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
simple. It is kind of boring, and I think it's exactly the kind of boring that we need
It's
right now.
yeah, and it's not trying to be. So I mean, the reality is obviously a lot of people are like wondering, it's like, what does this make sense? Where does this fit in the universe of pixels? I mean, if you're talking, MCU and so on.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Uh,
like is this the Captain Marvel of
this
Google
is the what
Pixel
this
phones?
is the what if, but Google Pixel released it. What if we took the Pixel 4a and the Pixel 4a 5G and we combined them and then gave you a
What?
bigger phone?
What? Shut up.
Yeah, and then not
Shut
only that,
your face.
we're going to charge you $50 less than the Pixel 4a 5G that we
What?
charged for last year.
What?
All of these things that you didn't, it was a whole bunch of things. I mean, I look at this and I know it may not necessarily be the flashiest looking device, but it does pack a lot of features, and it does, at least for me, I felt like the XL models were always a better buy for anybody looking to buy a Pixel, especially on the A series. And I know some people will fight me, and I do. I'm not disagreeing. Some prefer the smaller size. I think the 4A is definitely.
We had a
Uh,
conversation on the Discord about that this morning. Just it's a shame that we're not seeing as many options
there
because
isn't. Yeah. No.
Pixel
Exactly.
5 and Pixel 4a they're refreshing for just being kind of normal sized phones as
Hmm.
phone sizes have been climbing.
And
Hey, we've
and
got a couple more folks joining. We got Vince, we got Greg, Gary was
mhm.
already in here. We've got El Jefe Reviews. El Jefe, I hope you're staying out of the smoke, man. I know you said you only took like 2 shots outside, but we're having orange sunsets down here, so I can only imagine it's even worse for you a little
It's
farther
crazy
north.
up there further north. Yeah, no, for sure. Um, it is so for me. Like I said, I do appreciate the 4A and the 5. I don't disagree.
Hmm.
I think those are two. From a form factor, you still had it was packed with features. The 5 was definitely bringing in some new features. Um, I just felt like, but I mean, if they had to pick between not having an A series and having an A series,
Hmm.
they decided to basically just go all out on the A series. This is literally, in a way, for the best
It's
budget.
interesting. So I was really hoping for a 4 phone strategy
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
Google, a big little A series, big little mainstream phone. And here, like from last year, obviously last year was a very strange year, and Google just didn't operate at the premium tier. Like we got a premium mid ranger out of the
Hmm.
Pixel 5, and I think it arrived at a reasonable price for what it was that phone was really offering.
Yeah. Yeah.
This year, because of the same kinds of shortages, component issues,
Oh,
distribution,
there's a whole bunch of
shipping.
stories about manufacturing. Even they're not
Oh
able to
yeah.
move the manufacturing where they wanted to. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, assembling the phone, literally assembling the phone, shipping parts to a place to like put an assembly line together is also slowing Google down here too. I think
Hmm.
it's pretty clear. Like, if you're going to have a premium tier strategy, you've got a certain amount of resources you want to put towards that. And
Yeah.
it made sense to me that they took the A series and consolidated that. The
Yeah.
4A, you know what? The 4A makes sense as a transition phone for carrier support. It's an LTE only device,
Hmm.
and I still think that there's a value in having smaller form factor communicator phones. You're not going to get a ton of screen on time. It's not about that. It's about having quick reference, quick access. It's like a pocket smartwatch,
Yeah. Yeah.
not a mainstream daily driver, from sun up to sundown media consumption device. It's I need to keep up with messages, and maybe I play around a solitaire and then I go to bed. Like it makes sense for that. As
Hmm.
soon as you tack a 5G radio on, that doesn't make sense. And as soon as you make that a little bit nicer, you've got to pack a bigger battery like we saw with the Pixel 5. But those components are more expensive. So do you
Hmm.
put the more expensive components on the phone that's already designed to sell less? That is an interesting turn. So, the Pixel 6 is going to be a big boy, and the
Hmm.
Pixel 6 Pro is going to be even bigger. But we don't really
Oh.
have that big little strategy. We've got the A series, which is just sort of a mainstream commuter phone
Hmm.
with great battery. The Pixel 6 is going to be an a lower tier premium device. And then the Pixel 6 Pro tacks on the extra cameras and stuff. So they're not really the same phone in different sizes. It's a spectrum of consumer tiers, a
Yeah.
more mainstream daily driver, a Toyota Corolla, if you will, stepping up to a nicer, like an entry level Lexus, and then your sort of top of the line, balls to the wall, premium tier
I
luxury
would have
option at the
been
top.
Corolla, Camry, Lexus, stepping stone, stepping. But yeah, you're right. It's in the family. It's owned by the same company. Dude, Grounded Tech is in the chat, man. Hey,
Hey,
joining us from the. I think he's probably still in the hospital.
Grant's
Or
in
is,
there too. Can't
oh,
forget
dude,
about Grant and
Grant
Ranesh.
and Ranesh is in there as well. Sorry, and then Vince Nova is in there as well. He's just a little bit further up there. Um, it is going to be interesting. I was reading the room a little bit more where when I saw the 5A 5G come out and I realized that there was not going to be a smaller version. I was
Yeah.
actually, believe it or not, I actually thought Google was going to give us the 5A, not the 5A 5G, or even if they gave us a 5A 5G, but maybe kept it at a slightly smaller form factor, maybe somewhere between the 5A, the 4A 5G and the 4A. But
Hmm.
then they really, their approach was like, no, we're going to go with bigger display, bigger battery.
Yeah.
We're going to keep the antennas, the similar camera array, RAM configuration, storage, one color, kind of the same example that we got last year.
Hmm.
And then we're starting to see some people putting out some content on it. I think I saw you put out a video this morning talking about it. I'll try to put something out as well on it. And then there's some I want to say not controversy, but there's been some numbers have been thrown around about certain thermal connected or thermal
Are we going to talk
throttling.
like benchmarks out of context? Benchmarks out of
That's
context?
context. Yes, totally, totally, totally. That's how we do it.
Woohoo!
I'm going to throw numbers and you tell me which one sticks, and we're going to go with the story from there. I'm going to say 5, 10, 2 minutes. No. Uh, so there's been some conversation. Obviously, I think was it Adam put out a tweet. There was a few
Hmm.
tweets that he put out. He was filming
Trent,
outside, and he was having, and Trent was also. Yeah, I
Trent
didn't
backed
see
it up.
Trent's. And then essentially there was some thermal issues where filming outdoors. 4K, I think his initial tweet was 4K 30. He was having issues where he was starting to get the message that it bubbles up in front of him, tells him the device is warming up, and then basically the camera, and then it says that the device will slow down, and then he has to wait for it to cool down.
Hmm.
Now, then there was another one he pushed out for 4K 60, which obviously 4K 60 would push the system even harder than 4K
Twice as
30.
hard, one might
Absolutely.
consider.
Yeah, and keeping in mind what we're using. Um, I didn't get a chance to do it in the outside at the temperatures that he was dealing with, because
Yeah.
by the time I saw his tweets, it was later in the afternoon for us. So I ran mine, and I'm sure
Hmm.
you probably have your own numbers. I tested it between the 4A 5G and the 5A 5G. The 5A 5G actually didn't do too bad. I was able to go to 19 minutes straight with 4K 60 frames per second
Hmm.
continuous shooting. Now, mind you, I was indoors. I was not outdoors. I was not in sunlight. It was in more of a temperature controlled around, I want to say maybe 80 degrees, a little bit around 75, 80 degrees, somewhere between. And then the phone overheated. Then I got the message saying that the temperature was too warm.
But
And
I want you to stick the landing on that. So you ran a Pixel 5A
5A 5G
shooting 4K 60
60.
frames per second video.
That's the only way I shoot. Yeah, I nothing against
4K
4K
60.
30. If I have 60, that's the only way I shoot. So
But
4K,
so
yeah,
so did you, because I just want to know like testing protocol and whether or not I can replicate your results.
sure.
It was locked off, it was on a tripod, or it was propped up on
It
something.
was propped up. It was propped up by a water bottle. So it was
And did you
hand.
have stabilization enabled, or
Uh,
have you just not turned it off?
I didn't turn it off.
Now, it
I don't
shouldn't be
know.
doing too much because the
It
phone
wasn't.
was
Yeah,
stationary.
I was
So,
about to
with
say. Yeah.
with those shooting conditions indoors, and what would you
Hmm.
say roughly was the ambient temperature indoors?
So that I would assume somewhere between 75 to 80 degrees. So I would say maybe
Okay.
77
If
if I
I,
had to
if
guess what the
it's,
difference.
I mean, we could say like closing in on 80 degrees.
Hmm.
You ran the phone for 19 minutes in a
Hmm.
single clip of
And I have the
4K
and of
60
course
frame
I
per
have the
second
clip
video.
to reference. It was 19
Now,
minutes and 2 seconds. Yeah.
exactly how many dropped frames were there? Not kidding. I'm kidding. Go.
Hold on a second. Let me scrub through it. It was a consistent frame. It didn't. No. Obviously, this was not a high action.
No.
No moving. I'm not trying to. There's a lot of
And
factors,
and
obviously.
and indoors in what I would say is kind of reasonable
Yeah, like this is would been is
temperature
like
conditions. Yeah.
if I was using it for filming a clip for what I do, right?
Hmm.
If I prop the camera up, I put it usually on a tripod. It sits in the same spot. It doesn't move, and I'll be in front of it. And for the most part, it's a constant shot. It's not a moving shot. That's typically how I would use it if I was shooting a clip with it
Right.
indoors. And then I wanted to kind of also run my same test, exactly same configuration with the Pixel 4a 5G, because the 4a 5G is very close. If I had to, kind of like the dad to the son, or the older brother kind of relationship. Um,
Sure.
Now that one went for a much longer time, about 27 minutes before I decided to to give me the battery temperature issues. Um, and again, 4K 60 frames per second. So to me, I think it's more. I'm assuming the temperature is obviously going to drop a lot more, or not the temperature, but the what is it called? The duration will probably be a lot shorter if I was outdoors and it was 90 degrees and it was in, direct sunlight and so on.
Yeah.
I did register the temperature though off the display, and it was about 110
It's
on the
toasty.
yeah, no, it definitely got warm, but I
Yeah.
wasn't. Again, if I'm shooting content like this, I am not touching the phone. Whenever you're doing any content creation or recording, you're trying to be as stable as possible. So in theory, if the device can handle the heat, then everything would have been kosher.
For sure.
But we, I just for all intents and purposes, when it did give me the error message saying that it was too warm, I wanted to get a registry of the temperature. So I always bring out my trusty
Yeah,
temperature gun.
I've got one in my drawer over there. So
Yeah, I'm
I
like,
mean, I think it would be
what are
fair
you
to
doing?
say if we were talking generationally, because we can
Mhm,
all we can control for quite a bit. I mean, similar operating system,
mhm.
similar internals, components,
Very,
same
very.
camera stacks as far as we know,
Mhm.
similar screens. Then to me, it would seem that the idea of switching the build material for the rear and making it a bit more weather resistant is likely contributing to it having a little bit more difficulty clearing, getting
Dissipate.
heat
Yeah.
out of the body, which kind of vibes with my experiences on the Pixel 5. Like the Pixel 5 was pretty easy to get it to warn you about thermal throttling if you were shooting a lot of 4K video.
Yeah, and just for reference, so too, the 5A5, the 4A 5G, at about the 19 minutes when the 5A did actually kind of shut off, the temperatures on it was a lot lower. So it was, as you
Hmm.
said, it was dissipating heat much better than had something with a metal body
Yeah,
or
that
maybe
bigger
more.
battery is likely also
Yeah,
contributing
I was gonna say
to
there's a different, yeah, it's a different
retaining that
recipe.
heat.
It's a different recipe for sure. And yeah, when you're looking at it, 19 minutes, at least in my opinion, is nothing to to be ashamed of. I think that's a long duration for a single clip.
Yeah.
Especially if on a mobile phone. I mean, I cannot imagine you wanting to record unless you're recording an event that you're trying to record the entire thing on your phone. I feel like 19 minutes is pretty reasonable. I think a burst of, 2 to 3,
Hmm.
5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes top clips or stuff, that's realistic. 19 minutes pushing it. And then again, it took it about a couple of minutes to cool down and I was able to go again. It's not like it was down it was just,
Right.
it didn't let me use the video portion of the camera. I was still able to do still images.
So,
So
so here's, and this is what I think will be kind of interesting to see. Obviously, when we start taking these out into more challenging conditions, you're going to have
yeah.
issues, and I kind of feel like they probably won't be too far removed from the kinds of thermal throttling issues we're seeing on premium tier phones this year,
Mhm.
especially like Snapdragon 888s. I started running my own little test. I tweeted a photo sitting a Pixel 5a next to my OnePlus 9.
Mhm.
So here's the problem: the OnePlus 9 automatically shuts off in 5 minute chunks. The
Yeah.
longest you can shoot 4K 60 with stabilization enabled, like all the bells and whistles. But I wasn't shooting HDR. Is a 5 minute run. So my Pixel 5a did 5 minutes easy, like
Oh yeah.
not a problem at all. It made the
Mhm.
5 minutes, and it's pretty warm in my office. I'd say it's about 85 degrees in my office. Maybe even a little bit warmer, but I'm gonna play it conservative. Say it's around 85 in here.
That is
So
toasty, my friend. But yes, keep going.
the issue is if I try to cycle, there is processing happening in the background on the Pixel that takes longer than the recycling that happens on the OnePlus 9. So the
Mhm.
OnePlus 9 is kind of back up and running sooner
Oh yeah.
after its 5 minute clip has finished. And I got about another minute into the 5A. It was just under a minute. It was about 47 seconds when I got a thermal shut off. It
Yeah.
shut off the camera. And that's
It,
because it's processing the video before it
and
while it's trying to
while trying
shoot
to
and
record.
capture another video. So you're
Absolutely.
it's not just a double whammy. I mean, this is like as hard as the phone
Well,
can be working.
and we have to also keep in mind this is the 765. It's a very powerful processor to start with. Don't get me wrong, but we need to understand that this is not. This is where you were talking about. The OnePlus 9, although not necessarily the Pro, still runs the 888 UFS 3.1
Hmm.
LPDDR5. Right? I mean, we're talking the fastest internals also
Oh
in
yeah.
there at the class where that is. I mean, seriously, the 9 and the 9 Pro are very close in sheer horsepower. Camera performance is slightly different, but from just the processing power, they're very similar.
Hmm.
Um, where the 5A, you're right, it does take that little extra. I didn't realize it till I ran my test on the 4A 5G that the 4A actually doesn't let you save a 27-minute clip of 4K 60. It clipped it. I had two clips. So in the middle of
it,
after
it
it literally it saved two files because what I did is when I was sending you when I because I Juan and I were talking before the show, Um, and I was like, hey, I went up to about like 27 minutes, and I'm like, I went into my gallery, and I'm looking, and I'm like, all I see was a 7 minute clip. I'm like, what just happened? 27 minutes becomes 7 minutes. I swipe again. It's like, oh no, okay, 20 minutes. Okay, I see how it is.
Right.
So it has a cutoff, but the 485G did it like a champ though. It kept
Yeah.
recording for another 7 minutes while it saved and rendered and everything. So again, like I said, the dissipation and the allowing of the heat to dissipate because of the construction of the material that they use on the body,
Hmm.
which I think you pointed out at the beginning, was I think there is a benefit to having plastic on the back of smartphones.
Yeah,
Glass and metal is not always there's pros and cons. You have to kind of work
for
with
sure.
both, but yeah.
But again, I feel like a lot of these things are you need to we'll need to kind of keep these in perspective. And,
Mhm.
and like I've seen some heated discussions between friends. You know, catching Twitter commentary on this, like, well, I don't know average consumers who are really looking at a $400 phone or who care about shooting 4K 60 versus the people who think that you should always try to capture every piece of video in the highest possible quality that you can. And a lot
Yeah,
of people
of
talking
course.
past each other. And I feel that there's a conversation here where the way that these mid-ranger chipsets are being kind of overdriven. I mean, if we remember the 765, when phones started launching with that, there was no attempt at giving us 4K 60.
No, 4K.
Almost
Yeah,
all of these devices are locked at 4K 30, and a plenty of newer mid-ranger phones are still locked 4K 30. It took a few special options like the Pixel 5 and the LG Wing to show us the 765 could do this, but you're running the 765 at its upper limit. Like, you're running it hard. So I think it's one of those things where we have the reasonable conversation, and I feel like this is still the appropriate daily driver commuter phone for most people out there.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. If you're, yeah, this once I ran my own test just to kind of validate the numbers. I mean,
mhm,
looking at, like I said, don't get me wrong, there is always going to be a situation where I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say everything has an issue, but there are issues sometimes where there are hardware defects in certain units that may
sure,
have a thermal issue. I've had that in the past when I was testing the Xperia 1 Mark III at the beginning. My first unit from Sony was just not having it. Like I was getting thermal throttling on like just for barely turning on 4K with 60. I wasn't even touching the 120. And then the second unit they sent me was like a champ. It worked perfectly fine.
yeah,
So the hardware differences and the fact that the good thing is that we have this device in so many people's hands right now that
mhm.
are able to create content and that are also able to contribute to the conversation. But I still stand by the, hey guys, 19 minutes of 4K 60 is not a slouch. What could you be doing for 19 minutes and 19-minute shots at 4K 60 that you wouldn't necessarily be clipping it in shorter? Because I know if I stopped between those and if I shot them in like 5 minute roughly increment, I could have gone for more than 19 minutes because the phone would have had time to cool
Well,
down
see,
as
this
opposed to having to go
this
back.
is this
I'm
is
not
what I
saying,
mean
yeah.
is the education on this. What's on us now is to also kind of play around. There's a certain buffer period. The recycle takes a bit, and you can tell because when you stop recording, if you try to immediately delete that clip, the phone
I was going to say, just
locks
try to
up.
see it. If you
It
try to see
does
it in the
not
gallery,
like,
it,
well,
it
but
takes it
so
3 seconds to show up. Yeah.
it takes a couple seconds for it to show up, but as it's still chewing it up, it's even longer when you try to do something that would get in the way of the processing of that video. If you try to
Mhm.
delete it while it's in the pipeline, the phone doesn't know what to do. It's got like one insert. It's like Asimov's laws of robotics. It's literally like stuck between two conflicting orders. The order is, from the the hardware image processing, you're supposed to finish chewing up this video. The
Mhm.
end user is telling you delete this video, and those two orders are in direct conflict. So the phone just goes
Yeah.
and
Worked.
just stops for a second until it can kind of get through one and then deliver the other.
Yeah, it's sequence.
If
Exactly.
you're in a so this is what I mean. It's like it's on us to deliver the education that if you're in a situation where you think you're rapidly going to be bursting short clips of video, you're going to tank the phone. You're going to
Well,
tank the phone really fast. But if
exactly.
you can give it the buffer time to complete its background processing, and you're not because I had this problem with uh I had it a little with the Pixel 4, but I think I really had it with the Pixel 4a,
Mhm.
and especially with the Pixel 5 being another phone that kind of ran a little hot too. My normal camera testing protocol is to take my sample photos and then shoot a clip of video. If those sample photos are being processed in the background, it wrecks the phone for throwing video on top of that while it's trying to do that thing in the background. Very similar. Oh, the Nokia 9, that was the other one.
Oh,
Because
yeah, yeah.
those photos took forever to process. And if I
It was
tried
a
to shoot
shimmy.
video
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
top of that, the thing would
I
just choke. I mean,
I
it would just lock it up.
my short time with the Nokia 9, yeah, reminded me of how I felt like we stepped back in time. Like I was great and I was happy with the number of lenses we had there,
but
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 the
you know,
hit and
for
wait
as
3-4 seconds for it to show up.
For sure.
Yeah,
But for as much as we like Google's computational photography, there is no coprocessor in here to
no,
help alleviate that load.
exactly
It's
like the
going through
XL
the SoC.
or like the
We
4. Yeah,
know there's going to be some of that. So really, I mean, I feel like the conversation is if someone is inclined or is likely to be concerned about that, there's a reasonable conversation to be had saying, this is what I would expect would happen if you're constant like, hey, I'm going to my kid's soccer game, I'm going to be bursting photos, it's going to be like 90 degrees outside, I want to get those videos as they're like kicking balls into the goals and stuff, you're going to tank the phone. You're going to
yeah,
tank the phone. That's you just have to know that if you can't give it the downtime in between these batch processing things that you do, if you're trying to run it that whole time, it's not going to work. But to that same token, I don't think there are many current Android phones that are going to do a demonstrably better job and not either sort of corrupt video data or drop frames so that it's stuttery or just run the phone nuclear hot too. I know how to pronounce nuclear. I do that for dramatic effect. I mean, I would say like you got to go back to a Note 20 or a V60
yeah.
if you really think you're going to be running 4K video hot in hot conditions. You got to skip most of the phones that have been made this year.
It's definitely a it's not something a lot of people will focus on because they, like depending on how you're trying to shoot. And I think some of the comments also were talking about 1080p 60 is not bad, and I agree. I don't think 1080p 60 is bad,
No.
but there's a philosophy when if you look at it, what you're able to save. This is you're saving a memory, right? Especially as a parent, and I know Juan is definitely a very big proponent of that.
Yeah.
Saving memories of your children at the best quality possible, so that when you watch it again in years, you know the level of detail that you have in there. Um,
My
if your
daughter's
phone can,
first steps are in 4K thanks to the LG V20.
and my son is still running on, mine was on a Sony Ericsson, no 4K, it was a 380 or 480p.
No, it's
Oh,
fine. I mean, some people love their kids, and I mean, I
I
think the content that we share reflects that.
my love came later. Once QHD was
Once tech caught up,
one
then I
once
was
that
able
caught,
to love my
yeah,
child.
yeah. We had a very a very different relationship with tech around. I think it was mostly because we had different, like I said, I mean, if I look at the library of content that I've had, we've taken images of Omar with so many different phones, so many
Yeah.
different formats, that I look at some pictures and like, wow, that is just a bad picture. But it was literally from a flip Sony Ericsson because that was around when he was born, what my wife was carrying. So she had a lot of pictures of him with the little flip Sony Ericsson. Before I was able to get her into a smartphone, because at the time she wasn't very
Hmm.
keen on the slab. It was, to her, it was like, that's just too big of a phone. I'm very happy with mine.
Yeah.
Her first,
Isn't it
well,
so
when we
funny
met,
going back and like how much my wife fought like what is it that I tried to get her to use? A Galaxy S2.
oh man,
Got
okay,
like a 4.3 inch
it's a tiny.
display, and like for her, like this phone is comically large. I could never use this. I'm going back to my BlackBerry. Thank you very much. I said good day.
Good day, sir. Yes, good day. Yes. It
It's
was a challenge.
hilarious,
It
like
was a
how that's all
very
changed.
yeah, and but then this is the thing though. Once they switched to it, or at least with mine, once she switched over to a phone with a smartphone with a display, then the love was very much an instantaneous conversation. Every year we wanted a bigger display. Now my wife will only use a Note because she's literally, and in a certain way, she's going to be using the Note 20 Ultra for another year, for straight up another year till the Note 22, if whatever that comes up. Um, It's something to be said though, as you're able to capture. If you have the capability, if the device that you have can capture at a high resolution, you should. But then again, also understand what hardware you're using. Like you were saying, a V60 or a Note 20 or an S20, I think can definitely handle running hot or and allowing it to run hot for longer duration and without impacting the images. They have that built in, but it's a different phone than buying a $450 phone or a $300 or 400 whatever, a mid-range device that is somewhat limited by the functions that you have, the RAM, the storage.
Hmm.
And again, what you're trying to do, you're trying to push it as if it's an 865, um, but then expect it to, and then you were like surprised. So the short answer for me is, like I said, just understand the tool that you're using and
Yeah.
use it with the capabilities that it can do.
But
Uh,
I'm gonna push back. You're being very measured and reasonable in your conversation here.
that's usually how I am.
And I feel like I need to push back against all
Please.
these nerds that like whinge on and like, well, but I can get a cheaper phone with the Snapdragon 888. And all the people that were like complaining about, like the Surface Duo having an 855.
Exactly.
Like, what exactly are you I really want to know. I want to see your app drawer. I want to see what services you're using. What are you using that is taxing an 855 to such a degree that this is a calamity of a deal breaker, that a newer device, I mean, a device is released later in the life cycle of a
Mhm.
Snapdragon 855. And the further we get away from the 865, while I do believe the 888 has improved on modem and radio support,
Mhm.
if you care about like longer interactions, like running your phone at peak performance, I think the 865 is the more
Oh,
consistent
dude,
performer. It's not
or
more
even the
powerful,
870, or even the
or the
870.
870. Exactly. Yes,
The
totally agree.
870, the 2021 flavor of the 865,
So
which I'm very
I had to
surprised with the
I
yeah.
had to look it up. The very first photo of Lex, like literally minute after being born, was taken from an LG G4. So the
I
first
like it.
photo was a G4. I need to find the very first video clip we have of her, and I need to see what I took it on, because I think it might have been a V10, but I can't remember now.
Yeah, I gotta try to remember, what did I have 11 years ago? I really don't know.
It's
This is the
crazy.
thing. No, no, but so part of the conversation, also the difference between the two, obviously, is obviously Lex is a lot younger than Omar. Omar
Mhm.
is about to turn roughly 12, so we're talking, 12 to 13 years earlier than now, where tech wasn't exactly where we are, and then Lex is somewhere a lot closer. So you have the range. Uh, let's just say this: Juan had access to technology that was light years and years ahead of where my where my tech was. So let's just it is.
Keeping
It
it in
is
perspective. We're keeping
keep it in
this in
perspective. Yeah,
perspective
there
for
is
sure.
that conversation. We're not talking apples straight to apples. But yeah, no, I think to kind of bring it back, the reality is, yes, I know typically when the way I say things, I don't try to be very specific in pushing back, but um, if there's one statement I will say is this: don't knock it till you actually use it in the way that you're doing it. A test is intended to show you the limits of your system, not show you the daily activity of your system. Like I said, benchmarks are not real life. Benchmarks are not everything, because they give you that specific window in time. If I had to shoot 19-minute clip on a 4K 60 in 4K 60 on the Pixel 4a 5G, a 5a 5G, I'm very happy with that capability. That's a
Hmm.
very long clip.
Yeah.
The way I use it, and I'm not trying to cycle through where I'm shooting 3, 4, 5 minutes and then stop and then shoot another clip. You're right. You could push the limit and you can definitely hit thermals a lot faster. Environmental, when you're outdoors and the display is going to be running hot, full brightness. The ISPs are running, the modem is running, depending if you're not on Wi-Fi, if you're running on 5G. There's a whole bunch of factors that could have attributed to this, and to name the battery is also another part. So keep in mind, this is a $450 phone. This is not $1,000 phone. This is not 1,500. It's a $450 A series.
I think you're correct. I think it's important to kind of keep to keep our expectations in check, and
Mhm.
to understand what it is that Google's trying to accomplish, because also I feel it's important to consider, like, what are the claims that Google what
Yeah.
is Google PR trying to say about this phone. And so the Pixel 5a doesn't get sort of the runaway recommendation. I don't believe any phone can in this
Mhm.
day and age because, at its price being a little cheaper, that's
Mhm.
great, but it is running up against, say, last year's premium tier phones, which can often be had for around $400 depending on the manufacturer,
Yeah.
often a little cheaper. You can pick up a V60 for under $400 brand new on
Brand
Amazon.
spanking new 380,
So
$380.
completely acknowledge that.
Mhm.
Let's like really lean into what it is to represent competition. I believe Google is making the best faith argument that they can
Mhm.
in regards to bleeding edge Google services. So
Absolutely.
if you care about software and services and being at the front of the line
Mhm.
for those new services,
Android
and then
12, baby.
well, Android 12. I mean, again,
Exactly.
I'm using it on a Pixel 3a, and it's surprisingly good on a Pixel 3a.
I have it on my 4A, and I did the roughly the same.
Same thing.
I
We went with
yeah,
the lowest power phone we could get in our Pixel collection to
because if it
run
runs
this
good
OS.
on that, it's
You're
gonna be
good
screaming good on everything else.
because
Exactly.
it's too easy to run it on a premium tier phone because the
Yeah.
brute force horsepower
Mhm.
might gloss
Over
over
exactly.
optimization issues and stuff. So
And yeah.
when we look at that as one of the key arguments of why you buy a Pixel, it genuinely does age well over time. Google
Mhm.
software support, I believe, I would say since the issues of the Pixel 3, that what we've seen from Google has been markedly better for the Pixel 4 on in living up to that software promise that they
Yeah.
make their customers. The other thing, I said this in my Pixel 5a is boring video, and I'm going to repeat it here, but I'm not going to be as long-winded too late. Um, I think there's a good faith argument to talk about battery life as a feature by going with a more fuel efficient engine, by purposely designing big battery 5G radio,
Mhm.
mid-range processor, lower refresh rate display. I know way more people in my circle of family and friends that would care way more about the 5G phone, what gets killer battery life, over the premium tier phone that runs hot, that has the prettier screen, but you can nuke the battery, like after lunch.
No, it's not fun having to be at the gas station all day long or having to go to the gas station midday
Right.
just to be able to get your car to go, even though it's a crazy fast, really nice looking car. You're right. There has to be that balance of power. And I think so. Initially, when I first heard that it was coming out with a 765, I was a little bit pushed back a little bit. I'm thinking it was like, okay, well, why didn't we go with a more of a 2021 chipset? Why are we going with the same one? But then I understood what they were trying to do. There's like, well, the 765 performs very well. It did great on
Performs
both the
great.
the
Yeah.
5 and the 4A 5G. And it seems like they still have access to stock, obviously. So it seems like Qualcomm's able to supply them with it because we haven't seen other 765s. I think for the most part, we've seen 778 and 780s
Yeah.
that have been more pushed up in the mid range, and there's been like closer like the lower 7 series and so on, and then higher 6 series. Um, but I think the 765 was a champ last year, and it can still be a champ this year.
Hmm.
And for the price point that they're able to provide it to you for 450, I feel like it has the right level of upgrades from last year. Like it's substantial battery increase, slightly larger display. Yes, same camera stack, but then at the end of the day, it's not that bad of a stack to start with. A wide angle and a main shooter, but you're still getting all of the computational photography that
Yeah.
you're getting from Google. And then think of also how many years of support you're going to get.
Yeah.
How fast, and the pixel drop, the
So
feature drops
what
that they
what I,
do
what I think will be kind of
every month or
interesting
so.
is if I'll feel for Pixel 4a 5G owners
Hmm.
if the 5a really does get like an extra year of support over the 4a. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When
It's
we
it's it
know that
it's
they're
when it's the
so
same
similar.
hardware. Yeah, you're like, but 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 it's the same. It's just, I
Because they
mean,
do
like,
that with Chrome OS, like your
yeah,
Chromebook, it
it's
doesn't
based
matter
on
when
the
you bought it. It depends on when the Chromebook was actually released, and that's the window of support that it really gets. And
it's
I think Google might turn the screw on 4a 5G
uh
owners. We'll have to see.
Okay, so there's something to be said there is the fact that is Pixels are one of the easiest smartphones to root and to port ROMs over. So do not despair. If you are reaching that limit, that end of life of support, please, at that point when you know the warranty is already done, right? There's no
Hmm.
more things you could do. Like worst case scenario that you bork the phone, right? Um,
Yeah.
I would recommend checking out some custom ROMs that could definitely extend the life of that sucker.
But to your point, and I
Yeah.
think we keep talking about sort of cost and mid rangers as compromises,
Mhm.
and I
It's
feel I actually I know I feel like this is a strength of the phone, and that when if I were to put this phone in my brother-in-law's hands,
Mhm.
my sister, she wants a smaller phone. She loves the size of like the Pixel 3a. So she wants like the normal sized phones back when we had like Galaxy S7s. That's what she wants. Increasingly, she's going to run out of options for that in the 5G
Back in the
era.
olden days,
Yes,
yes.
exactly. As I like show like my crow's feet.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, the but if I were to put the Pixel 5a
yeah.
in my brother-in-law's hands, he's a little taller than I am. He's got like he can like palm basketballs and stuff. He's got like real man hands, not like my little hobbit hands. Um, nothing about this phone would be a deal breaker, and almost everything would be an upgrade. He'd have the
Oh, yeah.
ultra wide. He'd
Mhm.
have on his use, if you were to use his phone the way he uses his Pixel 3a, he would have like a 3-day battery life phone
Oh, yeah.
on the Pixel 5a.
And the 5A
Nothing
the
would be
5A
a,
for
a deal
sure,
breaker here.
from what I've seen at least, because I haven't been able to kill the battery in one day yet, but I've only had it for one day, so it's a little bit of tough story to kind of to talk more about.
So
Uh,
I haven't fully charged it yet. It came to my house with about 60% charge.
okay, yeah.
The first night when I was setting it up during the live stream, I was installing all my apps. I did a I tried to do a Geekbench run. It didn't work because I guess it's not like approved for Geekbench just
It
yet.
doesn't exist yet.
It
Juan, this
doesn't
phone is
exist for
not
the
out
Pixel
yet.
5 yet.
No, no,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I took the battery down to 45%, and
Some
then I didn't let it charge. It went overnight, dropped to 44%, and then I topped it off on a slow charger for about 30 minutes before I
mm,
shot my video today. And then I ran the 5A for just over 15 minutes of 4K video.
mhm,
So to cut down what I ended up with, I think I ended up with like a 7-minute overall editorial video that I published today. So
mhm.
I was shooting about 2 to 1. I cut out about twice as much video. I mean, I cut out about half as much video as I shot.
Mhm.
And no thermal issues, 4K 30 for 15 minutes
Oh,
of
I
like
I I I
continuous
would
video
imagine,
shooting.
yeah,
Golden,
if 4K 60 for me is
golden,
hitting 19, 4K 30 would be just,
easy,
for yeah, I could have just left it and walked away and came back, but yeah.
easy. So I just went through all that preamble. Let me just look at what my battery is at now. Hold on. So let me pull this up.
And I'll say this
Battery,
also for people while you're pulling
and
that
I'm
up.
I'm I'm down to 50% again.
Yeah. No, no, again, so for reference, one of the things I mean, I'm shooting on an A7S III, right? The A7S III has a thermal throttling option to turn off.
Mhm.
But if you don't turn it off, the camera doesn't allow you to go to an hour recording 4K 60. And I've gone for 2 to 3 hours. Our live stream typically goes for about an hour and a half. If I had not turned off the warning where I know that the camera is running warm already,
Mhm.
and Sony allows me to control this. Sony knows their cameras are going to go warm. This is Sony's heritage, kind of in a certain way. But just disabling it and running it and letting it, over run warm is fine as long as we're comfortable with it. So
Mhm.
the understanding is you need to just know the tool that you're using and
Yeah.
use it for the capabilities that it can shoot.
And
Do you
but
really need
to
that long of a yeah?
So, but again, and again, I'm not trying to pick on you. And there's some comments in the chat that I
Oh
think
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of lean
Gabriel.
into this a little bit too. I think the main point I'm trying to get at is we as techies tend to front load compromises. So even you're like, oh, you just need to know the tool that you need to know its limitations. You know, need to know what it can really do. And I genuinely believe in the hands of this mythical average consumer that we say that we're making these videos for, this mainstream daily driver tech owner, I'm saying the core things that consumers say they want, this phone achieves.
Absolutely, yes, no question.
And the price is just a perk. it's not a compromised phone that they'll have to learn to live with and figure
Oh
out
yeah,
these
yeah.
deal breakers. They're going to use the phone. They're going to really like the phone. And if you could give them the phone without telling them how expensive it was, they would never know that it was a $400 phone.
Yes,
They wouldn't
that
make
is
that
true.
assumption based on real life. I mean, I shouldn't say real life, real world communication, social media, snapshotty photos. The cameras are still stellar.
Hmm.
Google's camera stack is great. I can see where I want larger camera sensors for the footage and the videos and the photos that I shoot. In a point and shoot scenario, I don't know that the people who would genuinely be shopping in this tier would have an eye for what it is that that makes the difference between this and a significantly larger phone camera sensor.
If I was to make a recommendation for a great camera at a great budget for a great price on a smartphone,
Mhm.
the A series is an easy
Easy
example
recommend.
for anybody, for parents, for grandparents, anybody
Yeah.
my
My sister.
mother-in-law, I gave her the Pixel 3a XL because I
Mhm.
knew how well those image. There was
Yeah.
no doubt in my mind that she was going to be happy with the camera on this, and the phone was going to run fine. There's
What
no
what sold
issues with it.
what what sold my sister, I let her borrow my 3A,
Mhm.
and she had never been able to take a photo of her black cat where it wasn't either completely blown out
Well, out. Oh yeah,
or the cat was just a silhouette.
exactly.
And so she had it for like she had it for a couple days, but so for one night, and she takes the night sight photo, and the very first time she's ever done this. And I mean, warm like a lamp in the room, like you practically live in a cave and you don't even really know if you're not having like LED panels illuminate you for a live stream. And it came out perfect
Yeah.
for her holding still. And again, someone was asking, I'm sorry, Gabaletta was saying, why not get my sister an S10e?
Hmm.
My sister genuinely likes how her Pixel works. She likes how it's laid out, and now she's come to trust how those cameras function. And I genuinely don't think, even though the S10e is a better phone all around than a
Hmm.
Pix than an A
Then a
series
3a.
Pixel, I don't think she'd like it as much because of all the things that we allow for Apple and Samsung when we talk about more popular companies.
Hmm.
That familiarity has now been baked into her experience on an A series Pixel. That's what she's going to be looking for
Yeah.
when her phone finally dies. And I'm not um I'm not confident that she'll jump onto like a Pixel 6. I think she'll be looking at like, well, what's cheaper? Maybe I can get a good deal on a 4A 5G as a replacement for her
Yeah,
3A.
and I think the
I think that'll be the
485G,
jump.
the story of the 485G now becomes even stronger because of the 585G. If you really consider what you're looking at, I mean, obviously, a 485G owner would not be considering jumping over to a 585G. The differences between the two are obviously this is not a year. This is not a yearly upgrade. You get the
Mhm.
485G and you stick for a few years, and I think that's really the story there. But for her, if she's going from a 3A to, let's say, even to a 4A or even a 4A 5G, that is still a massive upgrade,
Yeah.
especially with the 4A 5G with the dual sensors, 5G connectivity, the bigger battery, larger
But
display.
you know what? There's a part of me that wonders if throwing my sister two camera sensors is just going to complicate something that she loves because of how simple it is.
It
Like
could,
I would
yeah.
have those occasional conversations with Marie when she first got her G7,
Mhm.
and she's like, I don't understand. Like this isn't working right. The photos look wrong. I'd be like, oh, you
Too much distortion.
accidentally
Yeah, switched over.
activated the ultra wide. All you got to do is flip it back. There's this little toggle right here. Oh, it took her a while, and it
Mhm.
wasn't like, oh, there's this cool new feature that makes the photos wider. It was this broke the camera.
I
and
like that.
and and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder, like there's a part of me like I might try and keep like if I can get a good deal on a Pixel 4A, like maybe I'll keep one in a box. And then when my sister's 3A dies, if there isn't something that's like a direct corollary, I can like, well, here, maybe try this one. And just like
Yeah,
send her a cheap
I
4A or
just
something.
the four, and I honestly think the 4A is still a champ. There's no question. Like I said, I've been running the alpha on it. It runs without a single hiccup. It's been stable. The last beta that was released, it pushed to download it and install it easy. So I think the story around Pixel is it's really it's a very simple story. it's a very I'm not going to say vanilla, but it's essentially it's that stock Android experience that's not a non-bogged down system that runs very efficiently on lower. And I'm not saying lower end, but not necessarily, that doesn't need 8 gigs, 10 gigs, 12 gigs, 16 gigs of RAM to run smoothly, and it runs so nice. The 7 series, the 765, I think was a great choice. Like I said,
Yeah.
initially I was thinking, why didn't we go with the 2021 variant? But then I'm like, you didn't really need to,
Well, I
right?
mean, if you can throw Jeff's comment up, I mean, he was talking about how I had to scroll back up. It's a little higher up. I am that average consumer, and there's nothing an S21 Ultra can do for me that's better
Mhm.
on a day-to-day basis than a lowly Pixel 3a.
No,
And
and yeah,
and I feel like a part of this, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with him. This is going to sound like I'm being snarky about his comment here, but there's this huge thing that we overlook in terms of familiarity.
mhm,
And if you've been rocking the Samsung lifestyle for a while and you pick up a Pixel, I can guarantee you that it doesn't matter how good Google's software is, how good the cameras are, all these things that we talk about, your output will be poorer because you don't have a feel for the camera. And
uh,
same thing,
yeah,
like if you're digging the sort of photo workflow
mhm.
on a Pixel, picking up another phone is going to be a culture shock. It's going to be
It's
confusion,
it's
and
different
and
camera
it's going to be
science,
very
yeah.
unfamiliar.
No, no, I
Like
agree.
LG was kind of the toughest to get across because I genuinely liked how they would produce flatter images that you would need to punch up if you wanted that saturated look, and the video would often look a little dull compared to the
Mhm,
competition, but getting kind of the right exposure out of those was tremendous. I mean, as soon as you dug into those manual controls,
yep.
I like that is so unfamiliar for how people shoot on iPhones. Like
But
we all
but,
can speak iPhone. It's a completely different feel
and
if
I've
that's not
tried
what
that.
you're used
So
for.
my wife would also be a very good example there. I think one of the reasons why, like I said, she's on a Note and she will stay on a Note is I think she's been on the Samsung ecosystem and only Samsung. So my wife doesn't change phones like I do
Yeah.
on a day. I was going to say on the daily. That was such a
For
pretentious way
you,
to say.
yeah, I'm
I'm
even kind
sorry.
of backing off. You've been
I
through so
I
many
I,
phones this year, dude.
um I am, yeah. It's yes. It's uh yeah, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. But I'm very, very grateful that I'm able to try different things and try to get my hands on different options.
Yeah, for sure.
But when I do show my wife other options other than the Samsung, like I take a picture with a different phone. Um, I was showing her some pictures with the Realme GT. She's like, it doesn't look. Yeah, you know what? I like it on my Samsung. Can you take it on my phone? Can you take it on my
Mhm.
phone? It looks better on my phone. Can you just take? So there's those controls, those functions, that the
Yeah,
temperature, the images, the way they come out, and that's totally fine. Yes, you're right. There's a reason why people buy existing, they stay in the same ecosystem. Um, but I also understand that what my wife's trying to get out of her phone is different than what I'm trying to get out of my phone.
yeah,
I'm looking. So the camera for me needs to be not just a camera that necessarily produces great images, but I need the camera that produces content or images that I'm able to work with later, because no, most of the content that I create on my phones goes into videos or goes into a backup. So for me, it needs to be something that I'm able to manipulate a little bit more. As I'm getting a little bit more into DaVinci Resolve, I'm enjoying so much the color options,
it's
the
so good,
manipulate.
right?
It is so much. It, the
The color
philosophy.
editing on it's
It's so
so
easy though. This is how
so
crazy.
easy.
It's so easy to correct the color. It is. I don't have to have a PhD to do the work. Um,
I just
I've been on it.
remember how I would try to do color correct. I'm terrible at it. First of all, I mean,
Oh no, no,
everyone knows
yeah, yeah.
my lighting sucks in my videos. But
I've
when
been
I would
meaning to talk to
try
you
to
about
just
that, bro.
tweak,
Yeah, but yeah.
I know you don't need to talk to me. I'm well aware. Um, when I would try to tweak color settings in Premiere or in Vegas, like
Hmm.
even my decent, like my Threadripper would grind like on that footage, and you just go into Resolve and you're like, color, let me just kind of tweak a little white balance adjustment, got the eyedropper tool, let me kind of bump up that gamma,
And it's
and
done.
done. Okay.
It
I and the whole clip plays in
as you're
exactly the
do
same
uh,
time.
I do
This
it
is
as I'm
great.
playing the clip. So I turn on the
Yes.
clip and I'm like like, "Wait, that looks a little bit better." And I look at my monitor, I look my over um
Beautiful.
it is absolutely a pleasure
I'm glad you're
looking
digging
at
it.
and
I thought you would. I'm really glad you are.
it took a push, more like a shove, like a few shoves, but then once I was able to use it and I started seeing the benefit. I mean, and for me, honestly, the biggest difference at all entirely is render time.
Yeah.
To this day, with all of the updates that
Nothing uses your GPU like Resolve. It
but
is
I would have
so
thought
good.
Nvidia would have by now, not Nvidia, I would have thought like Adobe by now would have caught up on their game
You
with a
would
little bit, but
think
no.
for it being a subscription, but I paid
Still,
once for Resolve and I've been good. It's been great.
I can tell you this much. My renewal will be renewed for one app. It will. I'm going to see if I can reduce it down seriously just for After Effects because that's the only tool I haven't been able to find
Yeah.
a good substitute for. But what I'm trying to say is content that I shoot on my phones typically go into a video.
Hmm.
So it's a purpose shot, it's a purpose tool, it's a purpose thing. I always go in with it as a purpose, and I do obviously have my family, my personal stuff. There's always going to be those images. I know that when I take pictures with a Pixel, the images are gonna obviously
They
they
look
just look
good.
stellar. There's just no,
Yeah.
I don't even have to look at it. I could just point and take a picture. Google has done a great job in doing that auto processing. They have now also added some nice options as well for skin smoothing. I'm not a big fan of those, but there's options in there as well. They're expanding. Their repertoire is getting better one step at a time.
Yeah.
Where we are
You
now
know,
with the Gcam is different than where we are
you know
5 years
what I
ago.
love and about what you were talking about is um so I'm a manual camera kind of nerd. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, if we're talking about a phone for me is an Xperia or a V60.
If he's
Like
exactly,
that
you want to be able to fine tune it. Exactly.
that's for
Yep.
me.
Yep.
And we're talking about me, my
Mhm.
preferences. One of the things that I have enjoyed about Google's camera evolution, and I think it's something that Apple is currently struggling with. So,
Mhm.
hot take here, guys. Google versus Apple. Um, the Google camera app has gotten significantly more feature rich, but
Mhm.
it really hasn't gotten more complicated.
No,
Little
it's
things
still
like I love how there's now guides. So when you turn on a guide, you've got like your angle and your tilt,
yeah, it's right there.
and
That exactly.
it ties into the haptic motor of the phone. So you don't you can be looking through the viewfinder at the distance of where you might be focusing out on your subject, and you don't have to pull your focus in. Do you know what I mean? Like as you're trying to focus on what the scene is, you're
Mhm.
not staring at the part of the screen with the level.
Yeah.
The
You're
level buzzes the phone
once it hits green. Yep.
once it locks on it. And it's just you can you guide your composition by feel,
Mhm.
which is so brilliant. And then the phone is still the best at subject tracking I've ever used. So once you lock onto your subject, you see a little floating circle icon of where the phone focused, and you can line up your composition knowing that the phone in real time is trying to stagger the focus to keep up with your subject. And then you
Exactly.
feel when your horizon is level through the haptic motor, it is one of the most just effortlessly guiding camera apps without it being in your way.
Yeah.
Anything like this on a Samsung is like two menus deep and toggling different modes and different
Oh yeah,
settings.
sliding menus on the side, and then you have to kind of readjust.
And you have to jump out of your viewfinder to get to those
The
settings.
evolution of Gcam for me has been a nice evolution to see, and this is definitely a feature rich. The 4A 5G or the
Yeah.
5A 5G are both feature rich. They get all of the new features that we had from the 5 last year. Again, the camera system that we get there, the processing, the stabilization, the cinematic, the pan, the night sight, all of the things that we expect to get from Google, and I think that's the benefit there. Portrait photography, I think, still one of the better options.
It's good. It's really good.
I did a portrait shot when I was trying to test it out where I had my hand out at the same time. So you know, like when you do a portrait, right? Most of us do portraits like this, right?
Right.
Chest up, kind of like a framed, and you're like, let me just blur the background. I wanted to see is with the with the Pixel 5a, if I had my hand up, like if I had, and you guys can't see it, but let's say I was having my hand next to my face, it was more of a wider shot. It actually kept it up. It focused on me, my hand, and then it blurred everything behind me. It knew that my
Yeah.
hand should have been in the picture, because I've had other phones where they're literally like
Because
my hand
Google
becomes a
is creepy and they know exactly what your body composition is.
there's a guy inside the phone right there. He's like, okay,
Like
okay,
chiseling it out of the
he's
photo.
trying to trick us with the hand. We've done this before.
I'm
People,
gonna disable his YouTube account.
that's exactly. That's why we're doing the stream on this show because
So
to
when you
protect
look
the
at that
innocent.
and you look at a camera app that has always, I mean, for a long time now, has supported kind of built-in raw capture.
Hmm.
The new modes for the video settings are built on actual content creation ideas. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
do.
that they're supremely successful, but the idea of like panning and tracking shots. So as you move the camera, there are modes that kind of change up the optical image
Yeah,
stabilization
and the
so that it
cinematic drop to 24 frames per
exactly.
second.
So
Exactly.
so things like that. Great. I look at what Apple is doing to staple more functionality onto the iPhone camera app. And to me, that looks and performs more cluttered. It's more
Hmm.
distracting. It
Hmm.
pulls you out of composition more as settings and menu options change or are duplicated between the
Hmm.
little caret settings on one side and then the main docked settings on the other. And I really don't think Google, even though this is not a phone for me, even though I'm still more inclined to lean into an Xperia or a V60 or something like that, I
Hmm.
don't believe that Google has gotten enough credit for how beautifully streamlined and uncluttered their camera app is, considering how many more features have been tacked on to that camera app over the last couple years.
Exactly, and we're still getting more and more. Like we talked about it at the beginning. 4K 30 was the best that we were able to do,
Yeah.
and then 4K 60 was added. And I cannot remember. Well, I mean, I do, but I say saying like I lost count on how many times, whenever a new phone came out, there was a running, not a running joke, but a running comment that I always got is, can we get Gcam on it? So the Gcam app itself has become a popular app to port because of the features and the way it ran, on
For
top of
sure.
the fact that the computational photography, the night side images, and so on. I think that those are the features why people got them. But it was also because it was a simple and easy UI element to work with. It wasn't very cluttered. It was, and the new additions that we have. If you want stabilization, there's a little icon on the bottom right that shows you a shaky hand. You press that, and then you select
It
what
goes into
level of
super steady
stabilization.
mode. Yeah.
Exactly, and you can do all the things that you want. If you want to be, run and gun kind of thing. You want to use external audio source, connect to USB-C a microphone into that sucker, and it works. It just,
I was so happy to see that because again,
remember,
it's not just so like the annoyance on LG.
yeah,
In the LG manual video setting, you
yeah.
can't use USB-C audio.
I
But
think
if you
you could
plug
use the
in,
yeah 3.5 mil. I think that's the
no, yeah,
audio
you
source.
could. But what I'm saying is if you plugged it into the auto video mode,
Oh,
it didn't alert you,
but it
but
would.
it would pull USB audio from a USB source.
Okay.
On a Pixel, again, this is so
It gives you
wonderfully
the option.
simple.
It becomes
It
in the
just
menu.
shows up as an option. So you
Yeah,
go
yeah,
into your settings, you plug in a 3.5 millimeter headset, or you plug in a USB audio device, and it doesn't like distract you. It doesn't assume that that's what you want to do. You do have to toggle it, but there
exactly.
it
And as it
is.
should be, as
It
it should
shows
be.
it shows up. There's a
Yeah.
new menu option. You tap, external microphone,
Hmm.
and then when you go to record, it says, "Oh, by the way, your audio is coming from a cabled audio source." Done. Go ahead, as you were, shoot your video, and it's great. And that's how I did. I did it through the 3.5 because for some reason I really didn't think the USB was going to work, and I know the 3.5 millimeter jack was going to work. I was so happy when I was shooting my B-roll. I was like, I should try. It worked. I was like, huzzah! That's
No,
great.
yeah, I tested it out before with the Pixel 5. I think that's how when I saw the option in there, it was working beautifully. And then for me, it's the right solution. I think that you need to have that flexibility. There are so many apps on the market now that don't usually tell you. Like which one I was trying to test out. I was trying to record audio on I think was it on the last. No, it wasn't on the Realme. It was one of the earlier ones, and I had to download Open Camera just to try to use the external mic, to try to use an external mic because the native app didn't support it.
Yeah.
We're seeing better support. Samsung, for some reason, keeps the external audio hidden within the Pro option only. It does not work with the standard, which I don't know why it doesn't. Like to use external for Bluetooth, at least
Yeah,
specifically.
although Samsung's choices for a lot of that stuff are just ineffable at this
I,
point. I don't understand the divisions that they make. in the different categories of performance for their camera app, and it's just never made any sense to me.
Yeah, no, I know. But so long story long, I think the flexibility of what we're seeing within the Pixel camera app has been moving forward, and I'm loving all of the new options that we get. So the end result is it is going to end up being basically what you're comfortable with. Just kind of circle back to what we were talking about
Hmm.
before. It is something that you're more comfortable with, and sometimes maybe jumping from one system to another may not work the way you would expect it. But if you've used Pixel for some time, you would appreciate how Pixel cameras have been working, how they've ever since the 3 series, it's around the Pixel 3, the 3 XL. Google made a massive shift in computational photography processing, and images, still photography became a massive hit, and everybody started to try to meet up to them or catch up to them.
Hmm.
So what we get here with the 4A, with the 5A, it's a well-rounded smartphone, for a large smartphone for one, with a large battery, 5G connectivity, and all of the Pixel goodness. That's with all the Pixel dust that you want to put it on, pixie dust or Pixel
The
dust, I like
Pixel,
to
the
call it.
Pixel Pixie Dust. Yes.
Exactly. That's it. Google
The the
magic.
the Pixel Pixie Powder. Does that work? Is that
Depends. What kind of show are we trying to do? We're shifting to the OnlyFans, and that comes after
Exactly,
that.
especially as OnlyFans isn't going to be allowing that
Well,
kind of
I
content
heard a different
anymore.
situation. Okay, so I was watching Philip DeFranco a couple of days ago. The first time I heard about the whole OnlyFans changing their approach, I'm not trying to make this into an OnlyFans conversation. I understood it that they were launching a separate service that was supposed to be PG, and that was the one that was going to
Hmm.
be where there were no, concerns or adult related material.
Sure.
Um, but I didn't think they were ending their normal service, their normal bread and butter, for the lack of a better term,
So we were
service.
we were chatting about this on the Discord too. Our current
Dude,
hypothesis.
I gotta jump back on
You're
this
on
again.
it. You,
I
you
admit,
can just
I
pop
know,
in
I
from
totally,
time to
I
time.
just
It's
need
great.
to jump in. Yeah,
So our current hypothesis is that
yeah,
OnlyFans might be facing some of the same scrutiny over. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, a little bit,
Aditya,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, good job.
you're slipping,
Um,
Aditya. No, that's good.
but OnlyFans might be picking up some of the scrutiny or some of the issues with human trafficking.
Wands.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
so, say someone is forcing a model on OnlyFans to be participating with adult content.
Mhm.
There really isn't a great way for the platform to address that. They've got to get complaints. They've got to have an action from law enforcement. Um, there's very poor tools at a platform's disposal to
Mhm.
examine that as a potential image of abuse. So if your platform is being run as a fan community middleman
Mhm.
for payment processing on this kind of stuff, it's probably just going to be safer in the near term to cancel those activities for adult content until there's some other kind of verification process that can uh, that is more able to help a platform filter out potential abuse. So
No,
I think this is the kind of the arms race that we're seeing
Mhm.
in the world of technology. I think for certain performers or certain models that were really heavily invested in the OnlyFans ecosystem, it made a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it might prove to be a business model that is unsustainable in the current age until we find better ways of verification.
I hope they do, that they are able to at least. I mean, don't get me wrong, adults. If you're an adult and you're wanting to, be responsible and take,
For sure.
what I'm trying to say is the point is we need to find that balance, which,
Oh
as you
yeah.
said, it's hard to validate, it's hard to justify, and um, it was something also that we kind of saw that went through with other sites that decided to go with validated accounts, and anything that was uploaded from any kind of content creators that were not validated was removed. So we're
Yeah.
starting to see this crackdown across. This was a matter of kind of like a time. It
And
was going to happen regardless at some
and
point or another.
anything we come up with as a better system of verification is going to be people with ill intentions are going to find a way around.
Yeah.
It's always going to be an escalation. It's always going to be a cybersecurity nightmare, a privacy nightmare,
Mhm.
a law enforcement nightmare.
Always, always.
But I hope that, companies that are looking to monetize specific flavors of web traffic are at least game for part of that challenge, because I feel like if there's someone who's wanting to more reasonably or responsibly support or consume that kind of media, they deserve a safe platform to engage with, free of sort of the outside stigma of what we know those platforms are most often hosting. And it's unfortunate that because of some really sick individuals out there, we're probably gonna see platforms reacting more conservatively and shutting that kind of stuff down.
So,
So it's a very difficult idea to kind of wrap my brain around. Like,
mhm.
what does that look like reasonably? And I don't have a good answer. But I'm hoping that some smart people out there can figure out something better than me just going, oh.
Eh, so what everybody's asking in the chat though, will that mean that Juan will be canceling or launching his only Juans on other shows or at somewhere else?
I just like,
Uh,
sure.
Aditya is
Let's just
over.
do it at this point.
No, no, no. Aditya is saying,
It's an MS-DOS
as an
only
MS
one.
only ones, no images, just overly suggestive messages from yours truly. Oh my God. I can see that.
Sure.
Take it back to the BBS, man. Go back to bulletin boards.
I miss, okay.
I'll even hook you up with the 56K bot modem, and you could dial tone your way
I was
into.
on a 9600 baud modem for my first message boards through old school ARPANET when I was
Oh
a
my
kid.
God. Okay, you had
So
okay. So I started with a 14.4.
yeah, no, I mean
Yeah,
14.4
mine.
was a big upgrade from
It
where I
was.
started. That was
It was.
huge.
Yeah. I all I know is yeah. Those are the days. I see those TikToks and fleet and what's it called, stories and so on, where they say there's one sound that will separate the generation. There's a generational sound gap that our kids have no idea what that is, and that is the connection.
Modem logging in.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh my God. Or if you have, if you were on the line connected to a board and somebody decided to pick up the phone and make a call and you just got dropped, and you got dropped hard, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. No.
So I kind of want to circle back because I know the OnlyFans was kind of a detour for us
The
there.
only ones was always a detour, my friend. Yes. Yes, for sure.
So I feel like one of the things that kind of gets lost along some of our conversations, not you and me specifically, I just mean techies in general, like how many smartphone reviews just end up being camera reviews, right? Like we
It's a
take the
big part.
smartphone-y stuff for
Yeah.
granted, and I gotta say it's been a while, and I feel like you would probably back me up on this. It's been a while since I really felt there was a tangible daily difference in most of your app performance
Mhm.
shopping mid-ranger to premium tier. As I'm
Almost no.
navigating
Yeah.
my core communication apps and social media apps, it really hasn't mattered.
No.
Flipping back and forth between the 5A and right here on my desk, I've got the OnePlus 9, a
Well, the 9 Pro. Yeah.
demonstrably
It's one of my the other one I'm using right
significantly
now.
more powerful
Mhm.
phone. It matters not at all for Instagram, like, not
No,
even a little bit.
the UI, the system, like, are we've reached a certain point right now where hardware has surpassed our daily consumable needs. And I'm not trying to use the word average, but for specifically, let's just talk specific, right? Banking, email applications, social media applications. Those
Banking
are,
is a great one.
but
That's again,
a lot of
like,
people don't really think about it, but it is a big part, right? If you're buying a
but
phone.
so I was on USA. I bank through a credit union. I'm with
Mhm.
USAA credit union. My dad was military. My dad is retired military, I should say, not was. He never really lived. There was a time where that USAA app, and because they don't have branches, so USAA was way ahead of the curve on things like scanning in your checks for deposits
Online
and that kind of
deposits and
tech.
so on. Yeah, yeah.
There was a time where mid-ranger phones, like I want to say Moto G4s,
That was,
could
yeah.
not run the USAA app well. Like just
It
trying to
was
cover the basics was difficult on a Snapdragon. What was that? 614, something like that.
it was a
It was
very
not
different
pretty.
generation. Yeah, there was a shift in 2021 in mid-range processors, or in 2020 to 2021. Sorry, we're in 2021. I'm still confused on this whole year system thing. Uh,
It's tough.
Last year's mid-rangers had a massive boost, but to speak to kind of to complement the statement that you're saying, no, I think most of these applications seriously do not notice. There is no noticeable difference in performance, and you wouldn't even notice it if you jumped from a MediaTek Dimensity, 1000, 1100, or even the 7 or 800 series Dimensities are still capable of running these, because we're starting to see more devices. By the way, MediaTek is having a massive year.
Yeah.
I'm seeing way more MediaTek enabled devices. Like I have the Nord 2 to play with as well. Uh, it is so good,
Yeah.
right? But mid-rangers to flagship processors, there's no difference. The 5A, the 4A, 5G, both are there. If you didn't, like you said, if you didn't tell the person how much is selling,
I
and
don't
you
think
just gave
they'd
it to
be
them,
able to tell.
they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two. The design may be a little bit of an indicator if they look at it. Well, it looks kind of bland. But yes, I'm totally with you. But at the end of the day, I always put a case on my phone. You have no
Right.
idea what my phone looks like on the inside, right? Obviously, Google didn't send us cases this time. We only got the phones, so we had to go pick them up. And apparently, this is the wrong size case. It looks like it's a 4A 5G that was sold as a 5A 5G. Anyways, uh,
Those bastards.
yeah, the cutouts are not 100%. Like the USB-C cable
Bargain
doesn't
ice
go in.
holes.
But honestly, you wouldn't be able to tell a difference. You and I use our phones a slightly different, but I think if you're trying to push your phone, like trying to shoot a 4K 60 for 19 minutes, I don't think most people will do that. I don't think that's something that on the daily people are going to be like, well, I want to be able to do this every single day. I want to shoot it in 4K 60. There are certain things that and I know I'm trying to front load the compromises. You're not going to be disappointed with the 485G. I can tell you that my mother-in-law is very happy with the 3A XL, and that's a
Hmm.
two-year-old phone.
Yeah.
So the 4A5G and the 5A5G are going to be a very big hit if you're in that price range. It's going to be in retail stores, which is going to be the better part, which is I think that's the biggest part. You go in there and you're trying to look for a phone under 600, under 500, a $450 phone that is Google backed and is a Pixel. That's a good seller. I think there's a lot to be said, but what I'm trying to shoot for here essentially is the story is not as it may seem. I don't think it's a boring
Hmm.
phone. Um, it's a phone that's going to be able to hang with you for years to come, and you're not going to be disappointed because it gets better every time they do a new feature drop.
Yeah.
Google keeps adding things, and
Well, and
then Android 12 is going to make it look even better on the UI elements because that's
well,
also the big
so
shift.
Android 12, I think, catches us up to some of those trends that we've seen, especially from like Samsung One UI skins, how Xiaomi and OnePlus are kind of emulating a lot of that design language, and everything's bubblier and friendlier.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that'll help because Google, um, baking some of that more into the core Android. I'm gonna be bummed because I kind of miss like the absolute starkest, most information dense style display. Like I love pulling up the settings drawer on an Xperia and that you've got all that space at the bottom
Mhm.
because like the entire settings list only takes up like 4/5 of the screen
Because you're
because it's all
scrolling all. Yeah,
just
yeah.
basic text. You don't have to scroll at all. It's all right there in one straight shot. I love that you never have to look for things by scrolling because it's all on the screen when you need it. Um, but I think some of those friendlier, consumery, pretty things are going to go over well when they're not just skin deep, when the core operating system is kind of incorporating that kind of aesthetic.
Well,
It's just something sorry, just to wrap up that point, it's just
mhm.
something that I find kind of curious where we like to speak for consumers, but I don't know that we've been listening to them very well. And for as much as I made the joke, obviously my video is called the Pixel 5a is boring, right? Like I'm kind of purposely kind of poking, Pixel fans and then seeing if I can clickbait some Pixel haters into watching a video that's more about reviewing and commentary. Um, but I think it's interesting to see where techies are off the pulse.
Mhm.
I don't know that Google is going to get that kind of consideration from all of the reviewers. Like it's going to be reviewed well, I think it's going to end up being kind of a generally liked phone. It's just kind of dull. I mean, what do you even say about it? It's pretty much the same phone as like the 4A 5G. Like, there's a lot of that kind of like dismissiveness to the tone of a lot of the commentary. And genuinely, I think this is a phone where if consumers got their hands on it for more than an hour, like if consumers used it for a couple days, the tone of that conversation would be substantially different. It would
Mm.
be a lot more praise, battery life, just I think yet another kind of, for me, this is another example or another data point where the people we claim to be talking about in these videos are farther and farther and farther away from the actual commentary we're delivering in these videos.
It's a tough approach. Yeah, you're right. I mean, trying to you need to relate to a user base that isn't.
I don't think they're watching our videos. I think we're making videos for tech enthusiasts.
Oh, I absolutely
And
to a
so
certain
we're,
extent,
we're, we're
yes,
trying to
totally.
confirm that audience, which is different. I mean, again, there is someone who is looking for something fundamentally different if they want like a Poco, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is a completely different cost price performance ratio kind of performance. But you take it back to a Pixel, and I genuinely have more faith in Google for delivering software that won't just tack on some pretty new UI elements, will genuinely bring new features.
Hmm.
And I have fewer fears of Google tanking the performance of an older phone with a late operating system update. I don't have the same confidence in Samsung. They have throttled phones in the past.
Yeah,
Their solution for the A88 is a CPU
totally.
scheduler that significantly degrades CPU performance out of the box. Like, that is not a company I have the same level of faith in
Hmm.
for a third or fourth operating system update late in a phone's life.
Every time you upgrade your software, every time you get a new update from Samsung, there's a little bubble that comes up and says, are you worried that your phone is going to slow down? Try some of these new Samsung applications to help you optimize your system. Samsung knows, not only do they know, but they also have apps. It's like creating a problem and then having a solution that only you
Right.
provide that comes up right after the update.
Hey,
It
sorry we broke your
uh,
phone,
but
but
like, hey, we could definitely delete some of those old files and we could definitely do, we could try to help you. Uh the approach is very it's comical to a certain point because they're admitting to the fact that they're potentially going to slow down your system because they're the one who pushed the update. The update isn't. It's
mhm,
not like Google's pushing updates to Samsung phones. It's Samsung pushing them. So if there's any issue with a slowdown on the system, it's due to the update that they pushed. But then they give you apps to help you. Anyways, it was whenever I see that note, I always find it to be it's under the Samsung Labs tab. It comes up and it gives you recommendations of what to install from the Labs tab to help you speed your
cool,
phone back up. You know,
cool.
and
I
I'm talking about the 888 here. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
the S20. The S21 was the one giving me those recommendations. Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, again, I just think it's hilarious because, like, the flip side of that is OnePlus not giving us any control over like CPU throttling
CPU
on
throttling
popular
and
apps,
which is
which
a
sucks because I
conversation.
want that as a feature.
It should be a
I just want
feature. I
control
totally
over
think
it.
it should be a feature. There's no reason why we shouldn't have the ability of giving the users the ability of controlling it. Even if you added it as like a developer option where you can turn it
Mhm.
on, just put it in there. I'm
They
sure
have a
you,
labs tab, and there's
yeah,
only like one
exactly.
option in there for what is it for display refresh rate?
Yeah, which
Add in a labs tab for CPU scheduling. Like, say, hey,
exactly.
I don't
Give
I
me the
need
shift gear.
Instagram
Yeah,
to only live on one low power CPU core. That's it.
exactly. There's no
That's
reason Instagram
all
needs to be
Instagram
anywhere. Yeah, exactly.
ever needs.
You do not need yeah, it is absolutely, it's one of those things you always this is one of those reasons why I was kind of like very surprised on how Realme's approach to phones is. Um I got a chance to spend some time with a very which I was very like I've never had a limited not a limited edition but like a numbered phone. They gave me a phone that it came with an actual number. It's the
Wow.
100,281th unit that Realme has produced. Um,
That
it,
feels less special, but
I know. No,
serialized.
I think during the time they were doing they were celebrating their 100 million device made and sold, to their consumer base. So basically, they were expanding. So after the 100 millionth was crossed, my unit was 281, which again, um, it's an 870. It's processed the 870 in there. Now this one has 12 gigs of RAM, 256, and even at its best, it's about $500. Uh,
Mhm.
it still makes a very compelling conversation as to what you're able to do with.
Yeah,
I mean, this is by no means. I wouldn't necessarily call this a mid-range processor. This is flagship. 870, in my opinion, is
yeah,
flagship level. It's
that's still
it's a
premium
tier.
tier.
Yeah, it's an 8 series. It's it ever I think somebody was commenting, I think it was Davin Davis was in there as well. He was like, "Hey, it looks a lot like a OnePlus 9 Pro." You know what? I told him, I said, "You know what? I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure at BBK there's a lot of, hey, can I check your notes real quick? I'd like to be able to just make sure mine look
Yeah, just
good."
change a few things so that it
It
doesn't look
it
like.
it it has a lot of aesthetics. It looks a lot like a OnePlus 9, a little bit, the camera setup. It's a Realme, and it's just it's very nice. Yeah, it's the Chinese model. Unfortunately, they didn't send me the U or the international model, um, and no, it mostly because there's still UI elements that are in Chinese, and I don't know how to read it. So certain parts of it I can't figure out what it is. But it was a nice surprise. I got a chance to spend some time with it, and I put out some videos on it. So I wanted to kind of bring up another phone, and we didn't want to make it just all pixel. Not that I don't like pixel. Yeah,
I
well,
mean, as
great.
we get into like what we're gonna try and shut this down in about 5 minutes here.
Oh crap! It's an hour and a half, dude.
Yeah, we
Okay.
already ran the show. So
I did
so
not know.
short
I did not
story,
notice. Yeah,
incredibly long. This
absolutely.
is
The
this
story
is
of my
the
life.
follow-up weird year to Google's weird year last year.
They're still
And
trying to figure
Google's,
things out. Yeah.
yeah, still trying to figure things out. Google's weird year last year left us without a premium tier phone. Pixel 5, I thought was a solid option for what it
Still
was
is.
really
Yeah.
trying to accomplish. And I think it's
Mhm.
still a great performer. Um, this year, in shifting around their resources and their manufacturing and their component purchasing, they're obviously trying to kind of relight some interest in a premium tier phone. And I think the Pixel 5a represents kind of the best all round idea
Mhm.
of still maintaining a daily driver mainstream option.
Mhm.
I wish we still had a big little phone strategy for the Pixel. I'd love to see a smaller Pixel 5a. The
Yeah.
Pixel 5a is already kind of where I feel like the XL should be.
Mhm.
But I feel like if we're balancing all of the compromises of doing business in the telecommunications space in the 21st century, I think they've arrived at something that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It's a bummer that it's still going to have regional issues, distribution issues, all the things that every other manufacturer is facing too. But I think we've ultimately arrived at something that like I feel good recommending. It's not uh I know for enthusiasts, it's not the upgrade that would be crazy and exciting over a 4A 5G. And I genuinely do think this is probably going to be the last year that we see this same design language and form
Mhm.
factor. I think the
There's a good
Pixel,
chance we're shifting. Yeah.
well, I think the Pixel 6a is going to look more like a Pixel 6. To me, that would make sense that the language of this, the Pixel 5a, looks like a Pixel 5. I think a Pixel 6a should look like a Pixel 6. So I think that conversation is always going to lag a year on whatever kind of premium solution they can put out.
Mhm.
But for what this is, I mean, first of all, this also just kind of reinforces like how much I liked the 3A and the 4A,
Mhm.
how much life these gadgets really do have in them, and how so many app developers and software developers are targeting the mid range over
Oh,
the premium
absolutely.
tier because everything runs well on the most mainstream phones that people can buy. It's not a big surprise that
It's it's a certain coding, or even just from any developer, you build it for the lowest common denominator, because if it runs great there, it'll run amazing on the higher end.
Yeah.
Scaling may be a slight configuration. You may have to work on scaling and so on, but for the most part, your performance should be measured by that lowest common denominator. Back in the day, used to be, make your website fluid on a 14.4 baud modem, and it'll run great on a DSL. You know what I mean? But don't build it for DSL, but everybody's running on a dial-up modem, kind of a conversation. But yeah, uh, it is still nice to see that Google did not give up on the 5A series, because it is late. As you said, it
Yeah.
came out late. It should have been out a couple of months ago, been May at least.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it came out, and I'm glad that it also came out before the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro, so that the story doesn't end up basically being, well, you should just go for the 6 because the 5A 5G doesn't make sense. It's a different series. It's intended for different users.
There are so many consumer, again, what I feel is we're building Google up to be the whipping boy that
They
maybe
don't need,
LG
yeah. Mhm.
isn't around to be right now, where the Pixel 6 is going to be kind of built up to take the fall for more exciting phones like flips and folds, and that we're going to point to sales numbers and be like, see, I mean, some more people bought 5As than Pixel 6s, and you're like, that's true of everybody.
Yeah, it's like saying
Every
they sold more A
manufacturer
series than S series. Yeah,
sells way more in the mid-range and the entry level than they do in the premium tier, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the tune to of like 20 to 1.
it
For
could be.
every 20 Pixel 5As that might leave the warehouse, one Pixel 6 is going to make it out the door. I think that makes sense, and we're sort of fine with that when we talk about Samsung, but we're going to point to that as, well, I mean, Google can't even sell their own phones and they make Android. No, it's not worth it. And you're like, that is a completely different conversation about popularity that you're sort of disingenuously highlighting for one manufacturer over another.
Absolutely. I think we need to approach the phone from what it merits and what it's capable of providing. And I think the 4A 5G and the 5A 5G are both, um, because the reason I put them both in the same similar category, because they're very similar realistically.
Mhm.
They're both very capable and will meet and exceed expectations, especially when you
Yeah,
start taking pictures with them. You're going to be very surprised with
it's fun.
how yeah, it's light years, especially at the price range. If you're looking at it, I know the 4A 5G is no longer available. If you try to go to that site, I think it takes you straight
Yeah.
into the pre-order of the
But there's
5A
still
5G.
some 4A 5Gs floating
Oh,
around
absolutely,
in
you could
inventory,
find them
and it's
totally.
not
I'm
it's not
sure
too hard.
they're stacked. They're stocked exactly. Phone companies and so on, and I'm sure like T-Mobile and so on, they still have some of those. So, um, with that being said, I think the nice surprise of Pixel was the one of my best part of this week. It was kind of a surprise. I did not see
Mhm.
that coming. It was more about like, it's a nice little fresh, like, hey, not only is it coming, but it's coming in the size that I was appreciating, the XL size, which it's just a preference. It totally is a personal preference. It's the right choice, but it's a preference. So just,
Right.
um,
I
you
mean,
know,
we're objectively saying you're wrong, but
yeah,
it's
pretty
your personal
much.
preference
But
is
it
what
is.
I'm totally picking up what you're putting down. I got you.
I appreciate it. But with that being said, what was your best part of the week? I guess I didn't get a chance to
So I
ask that
mean, yeah,
question.
in terms of tech, same. The Pixel 5A, when we kind of got that heads up, that little bit of a nod from Team Pixel, you never know. Like, is this just going to be the invite to one of these like virtual mixers that we go to?
Yeah, because
A phone showed up. Okay, yeah, cool.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, I can play with this. The other, it's over on my desk. I got another Lego Iron Man armor to
Oh,
put
another set.
together.
Nice.
So hold on, give me 1 second. I just need to detach my headphones, but I can keep rambling on my mic. If anyone kind of knows what I'm into, I'm a sucker for like Hulkbuster armors. But
Absolutely, yeah.
this one was
Oh, I
fun
hate him.
because it's actually kind of a throwback. It's the armor of the Ironmonger from Iron Man 1.
Oh, okay.
And so
oh,
it's the Obadiah Stane
yeah, 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 yeah.
um
Exactly, the one.
Ironmonger. And they even got the shoulder crossbars
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that do move
with the arms. Oh, look
with
at
his
that.
arms, like they actually like rotate out and stuff. Like they've
Mhm.
got little hydraulics in them. And I've been loving this, that Lego does like Gatling guns where they actually do shoot the little
Yeah,
Lego
I've seen those.
pieces,
Yeah,
which are
they had those with the
hilarious.
Jurassic series as well. The Jurassic Park has those as well.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, oh no, I lost his shoulder armor. With realistic battle damage. So this was my favorite of the week, was putting this guy together last week, because this was actually my gift from my in-laws. My wife's parents are like, we don't know what to get Juan, and Marie was like, well, he did say he was kind of into this. So now this makes 5
Oh,
giant robot Iron Man style armors that I have to find a larger bookcase shelf
we're
to
gonna have to
feature.
change, yeah, some gadget guy to some Hulkbuster guy
Yeah, the Hulkbuster
collection.
armors are definitely the best, but this one was fun because it kind of fits into the whole Iron
Yeah, no,
Man
of course.
theme.
Starting off with the first suit, no, for sure. The other thing, also, of course, as you probably all know, it's back to school time for all of our kids. So
Yep.
both my son and Juan's daughter are all going back. So we're going through some of that. It's exciting. It's challenging, changing,
Hmm.
going to somewhat of the new norm and so on. So all of that, and it's been busy. It's been busy for all of us too. I mean, day jobs, YouTube and all of that, everything kind of taking us
Keeping us
into
hopping.
keeping us hopping. Yeah, I did not imagine myself pushing out 6 videos by the time we were getting to this live stream on this
Yep.
week. I was used to doing two, maybe 3 a week. 6 is a bit, and I still have 2 more that I want to push out tomorrow because
Yeah.
I feel like the conversation needs to come out. So
I'm telling
look
you,
for.
man, you should start looking at maybe writing some of your
I
content.
need to build up this. Yeah, I haven't really been focusing on the on my site to publish things on it as far as editorials, as opposed to doing video, everything on video, kind of in that manner. So, I wish I need to focus on it. But you're right. I think editorial may be helpful a little bit on some of the other areas, not necessarily have to focus too much. And I also want to do some videos on the Tesla. I actually, in my mind, I still want to do that traveling with a Tesla video
Yeah.
that I every time I sit in it, I'm like, "Ah, I didn't do that one. I didn't do it." So I need to focus. So hopefully this weekend I'll shoot the A roll and I can start putting some of the B roll stuff. It is a challenge, but it is a pure. It was so much fun having to go all the way to San Francisco, Oakland, back to San Francisco, and not have to stop at a gas station and then charge. I was
Yeah.
even charging it at one point through the Airbnbs we were staying in. I just ran the charger at night, like the travel charger that comes with the car, to add a few miles on it without having to go to a charging station. So
Sweet.
it is so nice. Like it's just a very different way of traveling. First time, very different. So we'll see you guys hopefully next week for another episode
Mhm.
of the best of our week. Check out, of course, make sure to check me out on Saturday with the Saturday
Yes.
morning with tech. Juan Carlos with his SGGQA before we see you guys again next Thursday for the best of our week. Um, we'll see what next week brings. I'm excited to see what more new
Who
things.
even knows? Because it's going to be crazy. It's going
There
to be
will be
nuts.
some things. There'll be a whole bunch of things. But thanks to everybody. Gary the fireman, Aditya as always, Russ, Grounded Tech, Dan Tank. Hope you're doing great, man. If you're still with us in the chat, have a good time, and please recover, get better. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
play some games. I want to play some Apex Legend. And of course, with I know it's very selfish. It's like I don't care that you're not. You're no. I really wish you the best, Russ. Ranesh, Greg, of course. Oro Tech. I think if I'm saying this
Oh,
correctly, Orod. Oh, Orod Tech. Sorry. And I think Grand
Brandon.
like Tex. Yes.
Got a good
Is
crew tonight.
anybody? Oh,
Is
Gabriela
all
in
kinds
there.
of fun
Yeah,
people in
no,
here.
for sure. So keep an eye out, and then there'll be a lot more from us to hear on the socials. So check out Juan Carlos, myself. Of course, the audio podcast is also going to be linked in the description. Should be available tomorrow, or
Yup.
roughly in the AM tomorrow morning. But with that being said, be safe, stay safe, and we'll see you next week for another episode. Take care, everybody.
Bam.